All aboard!
Well, hello and welcome to today's edition of Shaky Hand Shed. And in today's edition, we'll be repairing, renumbering and renaming a hornby Chinese flying Scotsman that was purchased from Rails of Sheffield as a non-runner and broken. So, it was an unknown sort of unknown volume or whatever you'd like to say. Anyway, non-runner, mechanism forced into tender body, and it was tested by Brian, and it cost me just under 35 quid. And first things first, the motor had been forced up, but I'm giving it a service, taking out the contacts and taking out the springs and brushes first. It's quite a complex motor, the Chinese one, contacts wise compared to hornby. It's a very similar motor, but compared to hornby's original ring field, it's quite a bit more complex pickups wise. The actual commutator and motor's not that much different, apart from perhaps it's a 5-pole. Looking at that, yeah, it is, it's a 5-pole motor. I think the original hornby were only 3-pole. I'd have to look at my old videos. But I'm cleaning the commutator up there with some wet and dry and solver water salt. Here I'm re-greasing the gear wheels, wiping the grease off further down off the contacts and here I'm putting the front back on the motor. Now it's been cleaned back up and reinstating the bushes, carbon bushes and the springs, and I've speeded the videos up here so it makes a shorter video, but if there's any part you want to see slower on any of my videos, you can alter the speed on YouTube's player. You can take it right down, back down. It's got about 4 times slower, I think. I've sped it up quite a bit on some of them, about 7 times I think, but you'll get it a lot slower and can see what's going on better. Apart from the bits like that where my hand's in way. So here I'm still putting the springs back in. I had a goddamn almighty fight with her, as you usually do if you're old doddery and have shaky hands like me. You're gonna have a fight, one will spring over your shoulder occasionally. Let's just say I have a bag of springs in my spare box. I've already bought some knowing I'm gonna lose them. I've got new brushes as well, but I bought extra springs because I know the score with them. It's not when you'll lose, it's not if you'll lose one, it's when. Because believe me, when you work on these with ring-field motors, eventually you're going to lose one of the springs. And there we are, I've got it back in. It's actually a nicer engineer, but a lot of the modern hornby stuff, it's overcomplicated, I think. For what it does, they've built it overcomplicated. Then I'm cleaning contacts with fiberglass. I'm cleaning the wheels as well, the inside wheel surfaces for the contact with the contacts. And the insulated wheels are the ones with the grey. Well, actually, I confused myself. That's not quite true. I think all the wheels are insulated on the tender on these. I think they're all plastic wheels. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they are. And there we are, cleaning more of the insides of the wheels. And putting them back, I clicked it. You click it back into the chassis, and what had happened, I think it's actually been stood on at some point. I took a gamble and I ended up paying about what I'd have paid for a good one, but it's a good one now. Thing was, what had happened, I think it had been stood on, and the actual bit that were broken, or appeared broken, the tender was fine. I got it up and running. It just needed a bit of plastic flexing and pushed back in and re-clipped in. Bob with your auntie. Modern days. Bob's your auntie. Fanny's your uncle. Anyway, besides that, what happened? The actual, I'll come up to it in a bit. I'm doing soldering on the tender where wires had broken loose. I'm re-soldering them back on, and I've discovered it helps immensely if you get an helping hand with 2 crocodile clips on to hold the chassis and hold the wire in place. And it also helps doing wires together. Anyway, here we are, just testing it. The tender runs beautifully. And there we go, lovely runner. The old backwards and forwards. And I've got to admit, it's a lovely quiet and easily, with being 5-pole, it's a smoother motor than the original hornby. But the thing is, they make so fragile, and it's very hard unless you're very used to repairing locos, and with me nowadays, with a shake it's getting harder. Anyway, they'd also rounded the heads on the screws, and they're in a jolly awkward place to get to. So what I did, I had M2 screws, I used M2 screws to replace them, and because they were in an hard position and they were non-magnetic screws, I actually used black tack on the screwdriver head and pushed the screw into it on the screwdriver head, and it held it so I could get it into position. Then I peeled it off after. Job, bish bosh, job done. And there's the tender back together. Looking good. At a later date I may cut the coal out and put more realistic coal in. And there, that's a round sort of circlip that holds the extra wheel on your tender. And I messed around with this chassis, but I just couldn't get it to run smooth. It kept locking up. And the quartering were right. I checked the rods. The rods weren't touching each other. I checked the bearings, tried to get the bearings in. And I think it had been stood on, and I think I couldn't find where it were out of a line. They're too fragile and finicky, these ones now. If I'd played for it for absolute ages, I probably would have. I'm trying to get it sorted here, but I found another chassis for 25 quid on eBay, so it put it up from what? 30, 50. You can say the loco cost me 60 quid. A little over, because I bought plates and a decal sheet. But the Fox transfers can be used on. I've got them because there's other LNER locos I'm doing. So they'll be put to good use. Anyway, melt the flux. And the solder just drops into the wire. Then once that's done, I'll take the clips off, check it's a secure joint. It's beautiful and silver, it's not matte, so it'll be a good solder joint. And I've pulled the shrink tube over it. Now I'm just going to melt the shrink tube onto the wire. And happy days. And there's the other wire. Why I'm soldering these two together. The actual chassis I bought didn't include the rear pony truck, so I had to fit the one off the original chassis onto my new chassis. So we're just soldering the wires together, then putting the shrink tubing on, and gobs a juddin'. And here we are, we're coming in to melt it again. Me big hoof in the way. And here we go. Just melding it in. You can, of course, if you wish, use lighter. Lighters work as well. And there we go, that's that end done. Beautiful. And then them two wires just tuck up inside the body and out of the way, and beautiful. Boot and rolls lovely. I just couldn't get the other one to roll without locking up. I think it had been stood on and knocked out of line. Anyway, here we're removing the Flying Scotsman's numbe with a fiberglass pencil. Ready for a new number going on, which is 2502, or will be. And that, the nameplates are here, just cutting them down. And it is Hyperion, or however you say it, is the name of it. I think it'll be a racehorse, because a lot of the A3s were named after racehorses. So there we go, it's 2502 Hyperion. And here we're just gluing the plates over. Put a little bit of PVA on. They're not brilliant plates, these. I think in time I may just take it off and replace it with one of Fox's. Fox's are a lot nicer. A lot nicer plates of Fox's. And there we go, it's on at light at least. Just pressing it on. And there we are, we're doing deckling on the other side. Just putting them on, then the next job is to line them up. I lined them up off camera, and then in a bit you'll see me put some satin varnish on them. Just line up, and what I'm doing there as I'm putting them on, I'm using micro set, and then once they'd got on and I'd dried them off, I put micro sol over the top. Then once they'd dried off, I put satin varnish over the top. And there we are, that's the decals on. I'll be painting the front one there. And there we are, the front number's been altered. The plates are on, the number's been altered. We're all ding dang doing super. So it's now 2502 Hyperion, and it's looking splendid. Anyway, here we go, having a quick run, and quick coming past you now, looking well, and we'll do a second run, because we'll have to say tatty pie everybody, tatty pie.